Hey there, beloved soul. Welcome to Moon Temple. As the day begins to fold itself into night and the world outside softens into twilight, you might find yourself in that familiar quiet space, perhaps your favorite armchair, a spot by the window, or simply nestled in your bed. It's the time when the silence in your home, which once felt like a gentle embrace, now seems to press in a little. Not loudly, no, but with a quiet, undeniable weight. You settle perhaps with a sigh and notice how your mind, despite the stillness, just won't quiet down. Suddenly, unbidden thoughts begin to drift in, little tendrils of worry about tomorrow, old regrets from years long past imagined futures that may or may not ever arrive. And before you can even consciously name it, a feeling of unease, a pervasive sense of anxiety, has subtly taken a seat beside you, an uninvited guest in the quiet temple of your mind. It's a feeling many of us know all too well, especially as the decades accumulate and life invites new forms of reflection. But what if I told you that this very anxiety, this persistent inner hum, isn't proof that something is fundamentally wrong with you? What if it's not a weakness or a personal failing, not a punishment for having lived a full life or loved with an open heart? What if instead this pervasive sense of disquiet was actually a compassionate signal, a subtle signpost pointing you towards something incredibly vital, something profoundly liberating? In the ancient, timeless teachings of the Buddha, a wisdom passed down through countless generations, suffering, including this very familiar sensation of anxiety, isn't presented as something to be fought or eradicated through sheer force. Instead, it's illuminated as something to be deeply, intimately understood. And more than that, it's seen as a powerful guide, a gentle hand that can lead us back to the very essence of what truly matters in our existence. You see, for so many of us, especially as we came of age, the prevailing wisdom was to push anxiety away, to ignore its whispers, to suppress its rise, or to mask its presence with a flurry of distractions. Think about it. How often were you told to just get over it? Don't worry so much or keep busy. It's a very modern response to an ancient human experience. But the profound wisdom of Buddhist philosophy offers something radically, beautifully different. It suggests that our discomfort, our unease, can actually serve as a doorway. That anxiety, rather than being our sworn enemy, is in fact a deeply personal teacher, arriving with a message we've perhaps unconsciously brushed aside for too long. This truth rings especially clear in the later chapters of life, doesn't it? When the relentless pace of youth has perhaps softened, there's more stillness in the air, more sacred space to truly feel, and often more reflective time to remember and integrate the mosaic of experiences. In this newfound quietude, the message carried by our anxiety grows louder, more insistent, almost impossible to ignore. We are no longer rushing breathlessly from one task to the next, from one obligation to another. Instead, we are left simply with ourselves, with the intricate dance of our thoughts, with the raw, unfiltered landscape of our emotions, and with the simple, unwavering rhythm of our own breath. And it is precisely in this vulnerable, unvarnished presence that the deepest, most transformative work of self-discovery finally begins. You simply won't make it to genuine peace by running from yourself. This is real life. So as we settle into this evening's reflection, we're going to gently unravel one singularly potent idea, one ancient concept drawn from the luminous heart of Buddhist philosophy. This profound thought doesn't aim to miraculously erase anxiety from your experience. Instead, it promises to subtly yet profoundly shift the very way you perceive it, the way you hold it within your awareness. This very insight has brought profound comfort to monks cloistered in remote, mist shrouded mountains. It has bestowed a serene calm upon warriors standing on the precipice of battle, and it has gifted an abiding peace to countless ordinary souls, individuals just like you and me, as they navigate the quiet, unseen storms of daily existence. If you've ever felt yourself trapped within the relentless maze of your own thoughts, if you've been overwhelmed by feelings you can't quite name or articulate, or if you simply feel utterly exhausted from carrying the persistent weight of worry for what feels like an eternity, I invite you to linger here with me. This shared moment isn't about denying your reality or indulging in a shallow, toxic positivity. It is at its very core about embracing truth. It is about accessing genuine freedom. Because the deepest truth of your being is this: you are not fragmented. You are not failing. You are simply being invited with profound gentleness to perceive anxiety through an entirely new, liberating lens. Let us begin this journey not by fighting the feeling of anxiety itself, but by compassionately meeting it, precisely where it resides, deep within the complex architecture of our own minds and within the very things we tend to cling to most fiercely in life. The first key to unlocking this freedom lies in illuminating the often unseen origins of our inner turmoil. The pervasive unease we call anxiety doesn't simply materialize from thin air. It isn't some random bolt of cosmic lightning striking down, without cause, without pattern. No, this persistent internal tremor, this unsettling hum possesses deep discernible roots. And in the quiet, profound wisdom passed down through Buddhist traditions, those roots are illuminated by two incredibly powerful, intertwined forces: attachment, which is often described as a form of grasping, and aversion, a powerful recoiling. These aren't just abstract, dusty philosophical concepts pulled from ancient texts. Far from it. They are living, breathing patterns, intricate threads woven into the very fabric of how our minds instinctively react to the ceaseless, ever changing dance of life. This dynamic often becomes even more pronounced, more noticeable, as we begin to traverse the later, more reflective stages of our human journey. Think of attachment as the mind's outstretched, almost desperate, grasping hand. It clings with surprising tenacity to the things we love, to the comforting embrace of certainty, to the familiar rhythms and routines that define our days, and perhaps most intensely to the cherished faces and presences around whom we have meticulously lovingly built our entire lives. Consider for a moment the palpable sense of comfort that comes from a long-standing routine: your morning coffee in the same mug, the familiar path you walk, the daily phone call with a loved one. There's a natural human inclination to want these comforting anchors to remain exactly as they are, forever, unchanging. And when life, in its inherent, unpredictable wisdom, inevitably threatens to rearrange these meticulously constructed realities, as it always without fail does, that very act of grasping tightens. It transmutes into a profound, often quiet sense of fear. It's the silent plea from the depths of the psyche: don't take this from me. Don't let this change. On the opposite side of this psychological coin resides aversion. This is the deep, often visceral part of us that instinctively pushes away vehemently resists or recoils from what we perceive as undesirable, what we desperately wish to avoid. It's the part that rejects the specter of physical pain, the sharp sting of loss, the vulnerability that comes with illness, the ache of loneliness that can settle in like a cold draft, and even the subtle, often unspoken dread of the natural, undeniable progression of aging. We instinctively reject these aspects of existence. We fight against their encroaching presence, clinging to a hopeful, often futile notion that perhaps, just perhaps, if we push back with enough force, these unwelcome realities will simply leave us untouched, unblemished. It's like trying to hold back the tide with your bare hands, futile and exhausting. Yet this relentless cycle of clinging to what we desire and resisting what we abhor is in its essence utterly draining. It saps our vital energy, leaving us emotionally, mentally, and sometimes even physically exhausted. And more fundamentally, these strategies are ultimately profoundly ineffectual. As the Buddha, in his timeless quiet wisdom, so simply observed, whatever is subject to arising is subject to ceasing. In other words, everything. And when I say everything, I mean every single facet of your existence, from the grandest relationships to the smallest fleeting sensation, is in a perpetual dynamic state of flux. Your physical form transforms with each passing season, each passing year. Your most enduring relationships shift and evolve like rivers carving new paths. Even your emotions, those powerful internal storms that sometimes feel as though they will rage eternally, will in their very nature inevitably rise and fall, much like waves upon a vast and different ocean. And here's the crucial insight: it is precisely our unwavering, often unconscious refusal to deeply accept this fundamental truth of impermanence that so often gives rise to the insidious tendrils of anxiety. We resist change, we lament loss, we fear what is to come, not because change itself is inherently evil, but because we are clinging to a fixed idea of how things should be or how they once were. This internal friction is the fertile ground where anxiety takes root and flourishes. Historians still debate the precise sociological impact of this emphasis on impermanence in ancient Buddhist societies, wondering if it fostered a more resilient or a more detached populace. But its psychological relevance is undeniable. Let me share a poignant example that vividly illustrates this point. Consider a cherished elder, a retired Navy veteran we'll call Thomas, who for decades began his day with a steadfast, almost sacred ritual, a brisk, invigorating walk along the tranquil lakeside trail near his home precisely at 6 a.m. sharp. This unwavering discipline, this ingrained routine, had become an inextricable part of his very identity. It defined a part of who he was. It was his anchor. However, when a sudden debilitating hip injury compelled him to cease this cherished practice, Thomas's carefully constructed world, his internal landscape began to quietly unravel. He didn't merely lose a habit, he lost what he had come to believe was a fundamental cornerstone of his very selfhood. His anxiety, once a distant hum, swelled into a pervasive roar. He began to anticipate the arrival of each morning with a profound sense of dread, a tightening in his chest. Those quiet pre-dawn hours that once bestowed a profound sense of peace now served only as stark, painful reminders of what he had irrevocably surrendered. In a moment of quiet conversation over steaming cups of tea, I gently posed a question to him, a question that cut to the heart of his unease. Thomas, what is it truly that you are still clutching? He paused his gaze, drifting thoughtfully toward the window, reflecting on the changing landscape outside. And then, in a hushed, almost imperceptible whisper, he confessed, "The person I once was the one who could still move freely without constraint or pain." This poignant confession illuminates precisely what the Buddha's ancient teachings sought to reveal. Our suffering, our internal turmoil, is not born from the mere fact of change itself. Instead, it arises directly from our staunch reluctance, our refusal to release the firm grip we hold on how things used to be. When we cling desperately to the fading echoes of the past, or when we vehemently reject the raw, unfiltered reality of the present moment, anxiety deftly slips into that delicate, vulnerable space between expectation and reality. It then begins its insidious whisper, a deceptive murmur that suggests you are losing your hold. Control is slipping from your grasp. This is all going wrong. But here, dear friend, lies the truly liberating truth, a profound wisdom that can shift the very ground beneath your anxious feet. We never possessed absolute control to begin with. The idea of total control over life's unfolding is a beautiful yet ultimately painful illusion. Think of the profound beauty of the lotus flower, a bloom of exquisite purity. It emerges from the most turbid, muddy waters, pushing through the darkness, yet it unfurls its petals in unblemished splendor, untouched by its origins. Likewise, our deepest, most abiding peace does not spring from an incessant striving to keep every element of our lives precisely as they are frozen in a preferred state, safe from any ripple. No true tranquility arises from learning to gently unclench our hands, to release the instinctive grasping, to cease the futile pushing against what is, and simply to allow life to unfold in its raw, authentic truth, just as the lotus allows itself to bloom. You are not merely your daily rituals, however comforting they may be. You are not solely defined by the fleeting vibrancy of your youth, nor by the robust health of a younger body. You are certainly not confined to the narratives of your past, however triumphant or challenging they might have been. And when you begin, even incrementally, to loosen your tenacious hold on rigid expectations, on the elusive, exhausting pursuit of perfection, on the deep-seated need to have every single aspect of your existence meticulously understood and accounted for, you will begin to witness something truly extraordinary. The pervasive grip of anxiety, that relentless tightening around your spirit, will also begin to gently, subtly loosen its hold on you. As the venerable wisdom of the Dhammapada, one of the earliest and most cherished collections of Buddhist teachings, beautifully expresses, from attachment springs grief, from attachment springs fear. For he who is free from attachment knows neither grief nor fear. What profound shift might occur within you if today, even in the smallest, most gentle of ways, you granted yourself the grace to gently uncurl the tightly clenched fists of your mind? What if a genuine lasting peace isn't discovered in desperately trying to revert things to their former state, to rewind the clock, but rather in meeting this very moment precisely as it is, with arms wide open in soft acceptance? This is the invitation of non-attachment and non-aversion. So we've touched upon the subtle, tenacious grip of attachment and the equally powerful push of aversion, recognizing them as the root system from which anxiety so often springs. Now let's sink into an even deeper understanding of why these patterns create so much internal discord. It boils down to a single, inescapable truth that the universe whispers constantly yet our minds so stubbornly resist change, is the only constant. Imagine trying to hold water in your open hand. It's impossible, isn't it? The water simply flows through your fingers, always moving, always shifting. Our lives, our experiences, our very selves are exactly like that water. They are in a perpetual state of flux, an endless dance of arising and passing away. From the smallest sensation, a fleeting warmth on your skin, a distant sound to the grandest narratives of our lives, relationships, careers, even our physical bodies, everything is continuously transforming. This isn't a pessimistic view, it's a deeply realistic and ultimately liberating one. It is simply the way things are. The Buddha didn't just teach this intellectually, he observed it intimately in every moment of existence. He saw that our suffering, our pervasive anxiety, doesn't come from change itself. It comes from our fierce, often unconscious resistance to this flow. It comes from our desperate desire for things to remain fixed, for pleasant experiences to linger indefinitely, and for unpleasant ones to vanish instantly and never return. This clinging to permanence in an impermanent world is the fundamental friction that generates unease. Consider your body. Remember when it felt strong, agile, perhaps seemingly invincible. That was a beautiful experience, a wonderful chapter. But just as the seasons turn, the body changes. Aches emerge, energy shifts, capabilities evolve. If you're clinging fiercely to the image of your younger self, if you're constantly lamenting what used to be, then every new ache, every lost ability becomes a fresh wound, a source of profound anxiety. The change itself is natural. The suffering arises from the refusal to gracefully flow with that change, from the insistent inner voice demanding that spring stay forever. Or think about relationships. They are living, breathing entities, always evolving. A friendship might deepen, a family dynamic might shift after a loss, children grow up and move away, partners change sometimes profoundly. If you're rigidly attached to the way a relationship used to be, or frantically trying to control its future trajectory, then every subtle shift, every divergence from your ideal can become a sharp pang of anxiety. The love remains, but the form it takes transforms. The suffering isn't in the transformation, but in the grasping at a static image. Historians still debate whether the concept of impermanence anicca was a truly novel philosophical contribution by the Buddha, or if it built upon earlier, less defined Indian contemplative traditions. Regardless his clear articulation of it as a central pillar of human suffering was profoundly impactful, shifting the focus from external deities to internal mental processes. A wonderful little known story from the early Buddhist traditions speaks of a monk who was distraught because his favorite meditation tree had been struck by lightning. He complained bitterly to his teacher, "My tree is gone. My place of peace is destroyed." The teacher gently replied, "Was it your tree, or was it simply a tree you loved in a world where all things are subject to change?" This simple question highlights how our sense of ownership and permanence fuels our distress. The anxiety we feel, especially as we gather more years, is often a direct reflection of our confrontation with impermanence. The unexpected phone call, the medical diagnosis, the quiet house after loved ones have departed, these moments thrust us into the undeniable reality of change. If we resist, if we cling to the illusion of control, if we demand that life be stable and predictable, then anxiety becomes our constant companion, a siren warning us of our futile battle against the inherent nature of existence. It's like being in a beautiful dream and trying desperately to hold on to it as you wake. The harder you grasp, the more it slips away, leaving only frustration. But if you gently release, if you allow yourself to wake, you realize the dream was wonderful, but reality in its own way is also rich and profound. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent or detached in a cold way. It means cultivating a wise understanding that allows you to fully engage with life's beauty and joy while it is here without the subtle undercurrent of fear about its inevitable passing. It means experiencing sorrow when loss occurs, but without the added suffering of resisting the very nature of loss. It's about learning to flow with the river, not against it. When you begin to truly understand and accept that everything is impermanent, even the most persistent worries begin to soften. The fear of future unknowns diminishes because you realize the future is always unknown, always in flux. The regret over past mistakes loosens its grip because you see that the past is gone and the only reality is the present moment. The anxiety about loss transforms into a deeper appreciation for what is present, knowing that its beauty lies precisely in its fleeting nature. So the next time anxiety wraps its tendrils around you, pause, take a breath, and remember this fundamental truth: everything changes. The anxiety itself is also changing, rising, and falling. It is not permanent. You are not meant to hold on to anything, not even this moment of distress. By gently acknowledging the impermanence of all things, you create a spaciousness within, allowing the relentless grip of anxiety to loosen its hold, revealing the inherent peace that is always available when we simply allow life to be what it is. This subtle shift is a profound act of liberation, a gentle release of the very chains that bind us to worry. Given this profound truth of impermanence, that everything is in a perpetual state of flux, it becomes clear that our struggle, our anxiety, isn't from change itself, but from our refusal to simply let go. This isn't about becoming indifferent or uncaring. It's about ceasing the futile energy sapping act of clinging to what cannot be held and resisting what cannot be denied. This act of holding on, whether to an idealized past, a desired future, or a fixed identity, is the very weight that produces our unease. Imagine your consciousness as a crystal clear stream. When you introduce the act of clinging, grasping desperately at a beautiful leaf floating by, or trying to push away a twig you dislike, you disrupt the natural flow. The water becomes agitated, cloudy. True peace isn't found in controlling every leaf or twig, but in allowing the stream to flow unimpeded, in recognizing that its very nature is movement. When we resist this natural flow, when we hold on, anxiety manifests as the direct consequence of that resistance. Consider Eleanor, a woman who in her late 70s found herself living alone after a lifetime of constant companionship. Her anxiety was palpable, a pervasive hum of loneliness and fear for the future. She constantly replayed memories of her lively home, her bustling family, her active social calendar from years past. She yearned for the return of those days, unconsciously clinging to an image of herself as the central figure in a vibrant, unchanging social sphere. Every quiet evening, every empty chair became a painful reminder of what she had lost. Her suffering wasn't truly caused by being alone in the present moment, but by her tenacious clinging to a version of life that had naturally evolved. She was grasping at shadows. This concept of letting go of non attachment is not about apathy. It is a profound act of wisdom and self compassion. It means being able to enjoy the sun on your face without demanding it never set to love deeply, without demanding that the relationship never change to appreciate health, without demanding that the body never age. When we release the grip of expectation, the anxiety that comes from things not being as we want them to be begins to dissolve. Historians still debate whether the practical application of non attachment led to unique forms of communal living or individual self sufficiency in early Buddhist societies, as adherents sought to minimize the causes of suffering. Regardless, the psychological freedom it offered was unprecedented. A charming little known story from the Zen tradition beautifully illustrates this. A monk carrying 2 heavy buckets of water passed his master. The master asked, "What are you carrying?" The monk replied, "Water." Later, the monk passed by again, this time with empty buckets. The master asked, "What are you carrying?" The monk, confused, said nothing. The master smiled and replied, "Then put it down." The story highlights how even nothing can be a burden if we are clinging to the idea of not carrying anything. It's a subtle joke about the mind's tendency to cling even to emptiness or to resist release. For those of us in later life, the invitation to let go becomes particularly poignant and powerful. The very act of aging brings with it an undeniable confrontation with letting go of youthful energy, letting go of certain physical capabilities, letting go of established routines, and eventually letting go of loved ones. If we resist this fundamental process, our anxiety escalates, the fear of decline, the sorrow of loss, the worry about what the future holds. All these are amplified by our underlying resistance to impermanence. But what if you embraced this natural unfolding? What if instead of fighting the current, you learned to float? This isn't about giving up. It's about a profound surrender to the flow of life. It's about discovering that strength isn't in rigid control, but in adaptable grace. When you loosen your grip on the need for things to be a certain way, you free up immense energy that was previously consumed by internal struggle. That liberated energy can then be directed towards appreciating the beauty of the present moment, whatever its unique texture. Think of it like a seasoned dancer. They don't resist the music's changes, they move with it. They don't cling to a single step, they flow from one movement to the next. That fluidity, that responsiveness to the moment, is what brings grace and ease. Our lives too can possess this fluidity when we release the need to grasp and to push. So the next time you feel that familiar tightening of anxiety, consider it a gentle invitation to release. Ask yourself, what am I holding onto so tightly right now? What expectation am I clinging to that this moment isn't meeting? What part of reality am I resisting? And then, with compassion, simply allow your hands to open, allow your mind to unclench. You might be surprised by the lightness that follows. This isn't about denial, it's about profound acceptance. It's about recognizing that peace isn't found in getting things back to how they were, but in meeting this very moment with its joys and its sorrows, its certainties and its unknowns with open arms. The lotus, as we've mentioned, grows in muddy water, yet blooms in beauty. Likewise, our peace doesn't come from keeping everything precisely the same. It comes from learning to open our hands, to stop grasping, to stop pushing, and simply allow life to be what it is. You are not your routines. You are not your youth. You are not your past. And when you begin to loosen your grip on expectations, on perfection, on the need to have it all figured out, you'll start to notice something incredible. Anxiety begins to loosen its grip on you too. This is the profound, liberating power of letting go. As we journey deeper into the landscape of anxieties and the profound liberation that comes from gently loosening our grip, it's crucial to shine a light on one of the mind's most persistent yet often unrecognized illusions, the belief that we actually have control over the vast majority of life's unfolding. This pervasive myth, clung to with fierce determination, is arguably one of the most potent fuels for escalating anxiety, especially as the decades accumulate and life's inherent unpredictability becomes more apparent. Imagine yourself meticulously building a magnificent sandcastle on a pristine beach, pouring hours of effort into every turret and wall. You envision it standing there perfect and unchanging forever. But you're building it right at the ocean's edge where the tides driven by unseen forces are constantly rising and receding. The moment you believe you can command the ocean to stop, that's when the deepest frustration, the most profound anxiety truly sets in. The ocean will do what the ocean does. Your suffering arises from demanding it do otherwise. Our lives are much like that ocean, and our attempts to control every ripple, every wave, lead only to exhaustion and despair. This illusion of control isn't a flaw in your character. It's a deeply ingrained human tendency, a survival mechanism from a time when absolute vigilance was paramount. Our minds are wired to predict a plan, to prepare for potential threats. But in the complexities of modern life, this wiring can overfire, transforming into a relentless quest for certainty and an anxious fixation on outcomes that are in truth entirely beyond our grasp. The anxiety becomes a frantic internal grasping at reins that were never truly in our hands to begin with. Consider Martha, a woman in her early 80s who dedicated countless hours to tending to her beloved garden. Her roses were her pride, her meticulously trimmed hedges a testament to her care. But her joy was often overshadowed by a gnawing anxiety, the fear of unseasonable frost, unexpected pests, or a sudden drought. She would spend restless nights worrying about the weather forecast, her sense of peace entirely dependent on her perception of being able to control every variable. When a sudden late season hailstorm decimated her prize winning blooms, her distress was profound, far exceeding the loss of mere flowers. She wasn't just grieving the roses, she was grieving the shattering of her illusion of control over nature, over life's unpredictable turns. This shattered illusion fueled a deep, quiet anxiety that permeated her days, leaving her feeling vulnerable and helpless. Historians still debate the extent to which ancient agricultural societies, heavily reliant on unpredictable weather, developed philosophical or religious practices designed to cope with or relinquish the illusion of control over natural forces. Did the Buddha's teachings offer a truly novel psychological approach to this universal human predicament? Regardless, his emphasis on understanding impermanence directly confronts this fundamental human desire for mastery over what is inherently uncontrollable. A humorous little known story from a Buddhist text involves a farmer who was constantly worried about his crops. One year he meticulously planned every detail, prayed daily, and still a drought came. Frustrated, he complained to a wise elder, "I did everything right. Why did this happen?" The elder simply smiled and said, "My dear friend, you can dig the trench, you can plant the seed, you can pray for rain, but can you make it rain, and can you make it not rain?" The humor lies in the obvious truth, yet it points to our profound struggle with accepting our limits. For those in their 60s and beyond, the illusion of control faces its most undeniable challenges. The body, once a reliable instrument, begins its inevitable decline, defying efforts to maintain its youthful vigor. Loved ones, once constants, depart. Economic landscapes shift. The future, always uncertain, presents new anxieties, perhaps about health independence or legacy. If we cling to the illusion that we should be able to dictate these outcomes to prevent aging, illness, or loss, then anxiety becomes a relentless companion, a constant battle against the undeniable currents of existence. But what if you gently laid down the heavy burden of control? What if you recognized that true strength isn't in rigid command, but in supple adaptability? This isn't about resignation or apathy. It's about a profound, liberating surrender to the natural unfolding of life. It's about discovering that while you can influence, you cannot ultimately dictate. You can cultivate a beautiful garden, but you cannot command the weather. You can love deeply, but you cannot prevent loss. You can care for your body, but you cannot stop the march of time. When you begin to genuinely loosen your grip on the need to have it all figured out, on the desperate clinging to predictable outcomes, you create a vast open space within your mind. In this space, anxiety, deprived of the fuel of resistance and the tension of forced control, begins to naturally dissipate. It's like opening a tightly clenched fist. The tension drains away, and your hand, once rigid, becomes soft and relaxed. This radical acceptance of not being in control frees up an immense amount of mental and emotional energy previously consumed by futile striving. That energy can then be redirected towards what you can influence: your present moment, your attitude, your kindness, your presence. It's about shifting your focus from the external uncontrollable currents to the internal navigable landscape of your own mind. The peace you seek isn't found in commanding the storm, but in realizing you are the vast, unwavering sky that holds it all. This profound understanding of the illusion of control is a direct pathway to dismantling the very architecture of anxiety, allowing you to walk through life with a newfound lightness and serenity. Having gently unraveled the tenacious grip of attachment, the subtle pull of aversion, and the pervasive illusion of control, we now arrive at a particularly liberating insight from Buddhist philosophy: the profound wisdom of letting go. This isn't about apathy or indifference. It's about realizing that true peace doesn't come from desperately holding on to fleeting experiences or outcomes, but from learning to open our hands and allow life to simply be what it is. For those who find themselves navigating the landscape of anxiety, especially in later life, this practice is akin to releasing a taut, strained rope, allowing the tension to drain from your body and mind. Imagine you're trying to scoop up a handful of sunlight. The harder you clench your fist, the more it slips away, leaving only darkness. But if you simply open your palm, the sunlight rests there warm and expansive without any effort on your part. Our attempts to grasp at happiness, to cling to youth, to hold on to certain relationships, or to resist the natural processes of aging are much like trying to clutch sunlight. The very act of holding creates the suffering. Letting go, then, is not losing something, but allowing the natural luminosity of the moment to reveal itself. This concept of letting go directly addresses the roots of anxiety. When we cease trying to fix control or permanently possess the impermanent, the internal friction that fuels worry begins to dissolve. It's a radical act of trust in the unfolding of life, a deep surrender to the wisdom of the moment. This isn't passive resignation, it's active liberation. It's choosing inner freedom over a fruitless battle with reality. Consider Eleanor, a woman in her early 80s who had always found her identity deeply intertwined with her active role as a caregiver for her family and community. After her children grew independent and her husband passed, she felt a profound void, a sense of purposelessness that brewed into a quiet, constant anxiety. She clung to her past roles, constantly reminiscing about how she used to be needed. Her anxiety wasn't just about loneliness, it was the intense suffering of resisting the natural shift in her life's purpose. When a kind friend introduced her to the idea of letting go of past identities, of allowing her present self to emerge, Eleanor initially found it unsettling. But as she cautiously experimented letting go of the need to be needed in the same ways, and instead exploring new forms of contribution like mentoring younger women, her anxiety began to soften. She found a new kind of purpose, not by clinging to the old, but by gently releasing it. Historians still debate the extent to which the practice of non attachment in early Buddhist communities influenced artistic expressions, particularly in poetry and visual arts, which often depicted nature's impermanence and the beauty of fleeting moments. The emphasis was on appreciating beauty without grasping it, on experiencing joy without demanding its permanence. A humorous little known story from the Zen tradition involves a young monk who was struggling with a complex koan riddle designed to transcend logical thought. He spent days and nights agonizing over it, growing increasingly frustrated and anxious. Finally, he went to his master completely defeated. The master simply took the koan from the monk's hand, placed it on the ground, and stomped on it. Now, the master said, let go of the problem. The humor highlights how sometimes our deepest anxieties come from clinging to the idea of needing to solve something that isn't solvable in the way we expect. For those navigating life after 60, the invitation to let go is particularly poignant. The body subtly changes, energy levels shift, and the landscape of relationships may evolve. The memories of robust health, vibrant youth, and active social circles can be powerful anchors to the past, fueling anxiety when the present doesn't match. But what if you could appreciate those memories for the gifts they were without demanding their perpetual presence? What if you could celebrate the evolving wisdom and inner richness that comes with age, rather than lamenting fleeting physical attributes? Letting go means recognizing that your identity isn't fixed in external roles or past glories. You are not your routines, your achievements, or your physical appearance. You are the continuous evolving awareness that experiences these things. When you begin to loosen your grip on these external definitions of self, you tap into a deeper, more resilient sense of who you truly are, a being untouched by the changing tides of life. This process of letting go creates a profound sense of spaciousness within. When you stop grasping, your hands are open, ready to receive whatever the present moment offers without resistance. When you stop pushing away, you embrace the full spectrum of experience, knowing that even discomfort is temporary and can often contain hidden lessons. This gentle acceptance is a powerful antidote to anxiety, which thrives in the narrow confines of clinging and resistance. As the ancient wisdom of the Dhammapada, a core Buddhist text, reminds us, from attachment springs grief, from attachment springs fear. For he who is free from attachment knows neither grief nor fear. What profound shift might occur within you if, even just a little today, you allowed yourself to unclench the fists of the mind to gently release the burdens you've been carrying? What if peace isn't found in desperately trying to get things back to how they were, but in courageously meeting this very moment exactly as it is with open arms? This is the profound, liberating power of letting go, an invitation to shed the weight of worry and step into the spacious freedom of acceptance. As we continue to navigate the intricate landscape of the anxious mind, and having touched upon the liberating act of letting go, let's now turn to a particularly insidious whisper that often accompanies our worries, the pervasive sense that we are somehow losing control. This internal narrative, this subtle voice of fear, convinces us that unless we maintain a tight grip on every outcome, unless we meticulously plan and prepare for every conceivable future, chaos will inevitably ensue. This belief, clung to with fierce determination, is one of the most potent fuels for escalating anxiety, especially as the decades accumulate and life's inherent unpredictability becomes more apparent. Imagine, if you will, being the captain of a grand sailing ship. You meticulously chart your course, check your rigging, and study the stars. But then a sudden squall whips up from nowhere, or the wind shifts unexpectedly, or a hidden reef appears on the horizon. If your entire sense of security rests on the illusion that you can command the weather, that you can control every current and every wave, then that's when profound anxiety sets in. Your suffering arises not from the storm itself, but from your desperate demand for the ocean to behave exactly as you wish. Our lives are much like that vast, unpredictable ocean, and our attempts to control every ripple, every wave, lead only to exhaustion and despair. The ocean will do what the ocean does. This illusion of absolute control isn't a moral failing or a sign of weakness. It's a deeply ingrained human tendency, a survival mechanism honed over millennia. Our ancient brains are wired to predict a plan, to constantly scan the horizon for potential threats. But in the complexities of modern life, this wiring can sometimes overfire, transforming into a relentless, often subconscious quest for absolute certainty and an anxious fixation on outcomes that are in truth entirely beyond our ultimate grasp. The anxiety becomes a frantic internal grasping at reins that were in reality never truly in our hands to begin with. Consider Robert, a retired school principal in his early 80s. He had always been a man of immense order and meticulous planning, believing that thorough preparation was the key to preventing problems. Even in retirement, he found himself consumed by constant anxiety about his financial investments, his children's careers, and even the minor details of his daily schedule. He would spend restless nights churning over hypothetical scenarios, imagining every possible negative outcome. His peace of mind was entirely dependent on his perception of being able to control every variable to safeguard against every potential mishap. When the stock market experienced an unexpected dip, or one of his children faced a career setback, Robert's distress was immense, far exceeding the actual impact of the events. He wasn't just worried about the financial loss or his child's struggle. He was grieving the shattering of his illusion of control over complex systems and independent lives. This shattered illusion fueled a deep, quiet anxiety that permeated his days, leaving him feeling profoundly vulnerable and helpless. Historians still debate the precise sociological implications of the Buddha's teachings on the illusion of control within hierarchical ancient Indian societies. Did the radical emphasis on personal liberation from the desire for control inadvertently challenge existing power structures, or was it primarily an individual's psychological tool? Regardless his clear articulation of it as a central component of suffering directly confronts this fundamental human desire for mastery over what is inherently uncontrollable. A witty little known anecdote from the early Buddhist traditions humorously illustrates this point. A young monk constantly worried about the weather affecting the monastery's harvest went to his senior master. Master, he pleaded, I worry about the rain, then I worry about the sun. I worry about the wind, then I worry about the calm. How can I stop worrying? The master looked at him kindly and said, My dear student, when you stand in the rain, do you become wet? The monk replied, Of course, master. The master smiled, And when you stand in the sun, do you become warm? Yes, master, said the monk. Then, the master concluded, Why worry about what the sky chooses to do? You can only choose how you meet it. The humor highlights our absurdity in attempting to control the uncontrollable and the peace that comes from accepting reality as it is. For those in their 60s and beyond, the illusion of control faces its most undeniable challenges. The physical body, once a reliable instrument that largely obeyed our commands, begins its inevitable subtle decline, often defying even the most diligent efforts to maintain its youthful vigor. Loved ones, once constants in our daily lives, may depart, leaving an undeniable void. Economic landscapes shift in ways we cannot predict or command, and the future, always uncertain, presents new anxieties, perhaps about health independence or legacy, all of which are deeply intertwined with what we can and cannot control. If we cling to the illusion that we should be able to dictate these outcomes to prevent aging, illness, or loss, then anxiety becomes a relentless companion, a constant, exhausting battle against the undeniable currents of existence. But what if you gently laid down this heavy burden of control? What if you recognized that true strength isn't found in rigid command, but in supple adaptability, in graceful surrender to the flow of life? This isn't about passive resignation or apathetic indifference. It's about a profound, liberating realization that while you can influence, you cannot ultimately dictate. You can cultivate a beautiful garden, but you cannot command the weather. You can love deeply, but you cannot prevent the natural cycle of life and loss. You can care for your body, but you cannot stop the gentle, persistent march of time. When you begin to genuinely loosen your grip on the need to have it all figured out, on the desperate clinging to predictable outcomes, you create a vast open space within your mind. In this newly found spaciousness, anxiety deprived of the fuel of resistance and the tension of forced control begins to naturally dissipate. It's like opening a tightly clenched fist. The tension drains away, and your hand, once rigid with effort, becomes soft, relaxed, and receptive. This radical acceptance of not being in absolute control frees up an immense amount of mental and emotional energy that was previously consumed by futile striving. That liberated energy can then be redirected towards what you can truly influence: your present moment, your attitude, your kindness, your presence, and your wise engagement with whatever arises. It's about shifting your focus from the external, uncontrollable currents of life to the internal, navigable landscape of your own mind. The peace you seek isn't found in commanding the storm, but in realizing you are the vast, unwavering sky that holds it all unharmed by its passing. This profound understanding of the illusion of control is a direct pathway to dismantling the very architecture of anxiety, allowing you to walk through life with a newfound lightness, serenity, and a deep, quiet trust in the unfolding. As we gently loosen our grip on the elusive reins of control, we begin to unearth one of the most profound and liberating insights from the heart of Buddhist philosophy: the understanding that peace isn't found in keeping everything the same, but in learning to open our hands and simply allow life to be what it is. This radical acceptance, this profound surrender to the natural unfolding, is the very essence of true letting go, and it is the direct pathway to dissolving the deep-seated anxiety that clings to the illusion of permanence. Imagine a towering oak tree rooted firmly in the earth. It doesn't fight the changing seasons. It doesn't resist the harsh winter winds or cling desperately to its summer leaves. Instead, it gracefully sheds its foliage, stands resilient through the cold, and then in due time allows new buds to unfurl with the arrival of spring. Its strength lies not in its resistance to change, but in its profound adaptability, its deep trust in the natural cycles of growth and decay. We too can cultivate the same inherent strength, the same peaceful resilience, when we cease to fight against the inevitable currents of life. This understanding is particularly vital for those of us navigating the later chapters of life, where the undeniable realities of change become more vivid, more personal. The physical body, once a source of boundless energy, now might whisper of gentle limitations. Friendships and family circles evolve. Some loved ones depart, leaving quiet voids. Routines that once defined our days may shift or dissolve. If we cling rigidly to the past, if we lament what used to be, then each subtle shift becomes a fresh wound, a trigger for anxiety. But if we embrace the spirit of opening our hands, we can meet these changes not with fear, but with a quiet, grounded acceptance. Consider the vivid metaphor of the lotus flower, a symbol deeply cherished in Buddhist traditions. The lotus rises from the murky depths of a pond, its roots firmly embedded in the mud and darkness. Yet it ascends through the water, pure and unsullied, to bloom on the surface in exquisite, pristine beauty. The mud, the darkness, the struggle of its ascent. These are not obstacles to its beauty, but integral parts of its journey. Likewise, our peace doesn't come from a life free of challenges or discomfort. It comes from learning to emerge from the muddy waters of life's complexities with grace to bloom even amidst imperfection. It's about recognizing that difficulty is often the very ground from which deeper wisdom and serenity can arise. Historians still debate the precise botanical accuracy of ancient Buddhist texts when describing the lotus, often imbued with symbolic rather than scientific detail. Yet its power as a metaphor for purity and awakening from defilement remains universally recognized across cultures. This emphasis on beauty, emerging from challenge, speaks directly to how peace can arise from our experiences, even anxieties, when met with open hands. A charming little known story from an ancient text tells of an elderly woman who carried two heavy baskets every day, one filled with rocks, representing her past worries, the other with thorns representing her future fears. A wise monk observed her struggle and simply asked, "My dear, why do you carry such burdens?" She replied, "They are my life." The monk gently touched her baskets and said, "What if you just put them down, not for always, but just for this moment, and watch what happens?" The woman tentatively set them down, and for the first time in years, felt a profound lightness. The story highlights the subtle humor in our stubborn attachment to burdens that we believe define us. For those in their seasoned years, the invitation to open our hands is especially potent. You have accumulated a wealth of experiences, a tapestry of joys and sorrows. You've witnessed the constant dance of life's impermanence. This lived wisdom provides a unique foundation for understanding that grasping only leads to pain. When you release the need for things to be perfect or for outcomes to be precisely as you desire, you free yourself from the very tension that fuels anxiety. This doesn't mean passively accepting undesirable situations without attempting to improve them where possible. It means approaching life with a discerning wisdom, knowing when to act with intention and when to gracefully accept what is beyond your control. It's about cultivating a profound inner spaciousness, a sense of allowing where the external world can unfold without creating internal chaos. When your hands are open, you are not grasping, nor are you pushing away. You are simply present. This presence allows you to experience life directly without the filtering lens of expectation or resistance. The fear of future unknowns diminishes because you realize the future is always an unfolding unknown, always a fresh moment. The regret over past mistakes loosens its grip because you understand the past is gone and the only point of power is this very breath. The anxiety about loss transforms into a deeper appreciation for what is present, knowing that its beauty lies precisely in its fleeting nature. As the profound teachings suggest, when you begin to loosen your grip on expectations, on the elusive pursuit of perfection, and on the deep seated need to have every aspect of your life meticulously controlled and figured out, you will begin to notice something truly incredible. The persistent grip of anxiety, that relentless tightening around your spirit, will also begin to gently, subtly loosen its hold on you. This is the direct, undeniable benefit. Peace isn't a destination to be achieved through endless striving. It's the natural state that emerges when we simply allow life to be what it is and allow ourselves to be fully present within it, with open hands and an open heart. This is the profound, liberating power of truly letting go, transforming fear into freedom. As we embrace the profound wisdom of opening our hands and allowing life to simply be, a truly remarkable transformation begins to unfold. When you consciously begin to loosen your firm grip on rigid expectations, on the elusive pursuit of perfection, and on the deep seated need to have every single aspect of your existence meticulously controlled and figured out, you'll start to notice something incredible. The persistent grip of anxiety, that relentless tightening around your spirit, will also begin to gently, subtly loosen its hold on you. This isn't just a hopeful idea. It's a direct, undeniable, and deeply felt experience of liberation. Imagine your anxiety as a thorny vine wrapped tightly around your heart. The more you pull at it, the more it digs in its thorns, piercing deeper. But what if instead of pulling, you simply stopped resisting? What if you realized that the vine only has power because of your struggle against it? When you relax your fight, when you simply allow its presence without trying to tear it away, the tension in the vine itself begins to ease. It doesn't vanish instantly, but its constricting power diminishes, allowing your heart to breathe freely again. This softening of anxiety's grip is the natural consequence of releasing our own. This profound insight is captured perfectly in one of the most beloved and ancient Buddhist verses from the Dhammapada, a cornerstone text that has guided countless souls for centuries. From attachment springs grief, from attachment springs fear. For he who is free from attachment knows neither grief nor fear. This isn't a stern warning, it's a gentle map to freedom. It tells us with crystal clarity that the very source of our emotional suffering, our gnawing anxieties, and deep seated fears, lies in our clinging, our insistence that things must be a certain way or that certain experiences must last forever. When that clinging softens, when we release our desperate hold, the fear and grief that inevitably follow it naturally recede. Consider a woman named Clara, a retired concert pianist in her late 70s, who for decades had meticulously controlled every aspect of her life, from her daily practice regimen to her diet. She was a master of precision, but after a stroke subtly affected the dexterity in her left hand, her world was plunged into quiet anxiety. She clung fiercely to the memory of her flawless performances, to the image of her nimble fingers, and to the expectation of a perfect, unblemished retirement. Her anxiety was a constant companion, fueled by the relentless comparison between her current reality and her past perfection. It was only when she reluctantly, painstakingly began to allow for imperfection, to explore new ways of engaging with music, perhaps teaching or playing simpler pieces for pure joy, that her anxiety began to truly loosen its grip. The release wasn't in regaining her old dexterity, but in letting go of the need for it. Historians still debate the specific pedagogical approaches used in ancient Buddhist monasteries to teach and embody this profound non attachment. Was it through rigorous meditation, philosophical discourse, or experiential practices in daily life? What is clear is that this concept was central to cultivating inner peace. A humorous yet deeply insightful anecdote, often attributed to Zen teaching, goes like this. A worried man approached a Zen master and said, "Master, I am constantly carrying this heavy burden of worry. How can I put it down?" The master picked up a teacup, poured water into it until it overflowed, spilling onto the floor. "See," the master said, "you can't hold any more. It's too full, but you keep trying." The man looked puzzled. The master smiled and said, "My dear friend, you're not carrying the worry. You are the worry. You are holding the cup. Just put the cup down." The humor lies in our tendency to identify with our worries, to clutch them as part of ourselves when they are simply passing contents of the mind. For those of us in later life, this teaching on loosening anxiety's grip is not just comforting, but profoundly practical. We've lived long enough to accumulate both joys and sorrows, successes and disappointments. We've witnessed the relentless impermanence of all things. This lived experience can either harden us, making us cling tighter to what we fear losing, or it can soften us, opening us to the wisdom of letting go. When health concerns arise, when beloved friends pass on, when the comfortable routines of years dissolve, the temptation is to grasp tighter, to resist these natural shifts. But it's in this very resistance that anxiety thrives. What would truly happen if today, even just a little, you allowed yourself to unclench the fists of your mind? Those fists that have perhaps been gripping tightly onto expectations, on control, on past glories, or on future fears. What if you allowed that tension to simply soften? Imagine it. The muscles in your jaw relaxing your shoulders, dropping the subtle tightening in your chest, easing. This isn't a passive surrender, it's an active choice to release the internal struggle. What if peace isn't found in desperately trying to get things back to how they were, or in perfectly orchestrating every aspect of tomorrow? What if instead peace is found in courageously meeting this very moment, precisely as it is, with open arms? This means greeting the quiet evening, the unexpected ache, the lingering question, not with resistance, but with a gentle acceptance. It means allowing yourself to be fully present for the unfolding of life without the added layer of mental friction. When you practice this, the anxieties that once felt like unbreakable chains begin to loosen link by link. You realize you are not broken, you are not failing, you are simply learning a new way to be in the world, a way that honors the impermanent nature of life, and in doing so finds profound and lasting peace. This gentle loosening of anxiety's grip reveals the deep well of tranquility that has always resided within you, simply waiting for you to unburden yourself of the things you were never meant to carry. Having understood the wisdom of releasing our grip on outcomes, we now arrive at perhaps the most direct and potent tool for dismantling anxiety. A single thought, so deceptively simple, yet so profoundly powerful. This too is just a thought. This isn't merely an affirmation to be recited, it's an invitation to a radical shift in how you relate to the ceaseless activity of your own mind. For those whose minds have long been accustomed to churning worries, embracing this thought is like finally stepping off a relentless treadmill, allowing your internal landscape to settle into a natural stillness. Imagine your consciousness as the vast, boundless sky. Thoughts, feelings, and sensations are like clouds drifting across it. Some clouds might be dark and stormy, heavy with worry or fear. Others might be light and airy, filled with fleeting joys. But crucially, the clouds are not the sky itself. They are transient phenomena appearing and disappearing, while the sky remains vast, unchanging, and utterly unaffected by their passing. When anxiety takes hold, we often forget we are the sky and mistakenly identify ourselves as the storm, becoming overwhelmed by the very clouds that merely pass through. The thought, "This too is just a thought," is the gentle reminder that you are the spacious sky, not the fleeting cloud. Pause with that for a moment. Not every single thought that surfaces in the vast expanse of your mind carries the weight of ultimate truth. Not every idea, no matter how insistent or compelling it feels, is worthy of your unwavering trust. Some are merely faint echoes of anxieties from years long past, old habits of worry that have been passed down through generations, almost like uncomfortable family heirlooms. Others are simply the brain diligently doing what it has evolved to do for decades, constantly scanning, perpetually protecting, endlessly imagining scenarios both bright and dim. But a thought, any thought, no matter how loud its clamor or how relentlessly persistent its presence, is not a fact. It is at its essence a passing cloud, a fleeting ripple on the surface of your awareness, not the deep, still ocean beneath. Consider Martha, a woman in her late 70s who had always been a meticulous planner. After her husband passed, she found herself haunted by the persistent thought, what if I forget to turn off the stove? Or what if I fall and no one finds me? These weren't entirely unrealistic fears for someone living alone, but they weren't happening. They were thoughts, and they arrived with a pounding heart, a tight chest, and a racing mind. They felt incredibly real and urgent, compelling her to check the stove multiple times or to avoid certain parts of her home. Her anxiety was fueled by her belief that these thoughts were undeniable truths, warnings she must heed rather than just transient mental events. Historians still debate the precise techniques and internal practices ancient Buddhist meditators used to achieve sustained states of non identification with thought, wondering if these were primarily verbal affirmations or deeper precognitive insights. However, the emphasis on recognizing thoughts as separate from self was a cornerstone of early psychological liberation. A witty little known anecdote from the Zen tradition involves a student complaining to his master, Master, my mind is full of thoughts. I can't meditate, they just won't stop. The master picked up a cup of tea, took a sip, and then with a twinkle in his eye said, Ah, yes, thoughts, like gnats buzzing around a summer lamp. Do you swat every single one, or do you just watch them and enjoy your tea? The humor lies in our exhausting tendency to engage with every thought as if it demands our immediate attention rather than simply observing it as it passes. For those in their 60s and beyond, this teaching on thought as a passing cloud is particularly potent. As life's pace might slow, the mind often has more space to ruminate. Old memories, future uncertainties, and existential questions can surface with greater frequency. The temptation to fall into every thought, to believe its narrative, implicitly becomes stronger. But cultivating the understanding that this too is just a thought allows you to create a crucial distance, a spacious buffer between you and the mental activity. When anxiety, as overwhelming as it can feel, often begins with a single thought, a what if, a should have, a will I be okay. That thought gains its formidable power only when we believe it without question. It's like accepting a compelling movie scene as reality, forgetting you're just sitting in a theater. The practice then is not to suppress anxious thoughts, nor to shame yourself for having them. The practice is to see them clearly, to acknowledge their presence without claiming them as your truth. It is to silently, gently say to them, Ah, I see you, thought. You are attempting to protect me. You are trying to warn me, but you are not the ultimate reality, and you are not in control of my inner peace. This represents a subtle yet utterly transformative shift from being entirely submerged inside the thought to quietly standing beside it, observing its nature, its fleeting quality. This shift is everything. As the great teacher, Ajahn Chah once wisely remarked, if you let go a little, you'll have a little peace. If you let go a lot, you'll have a lot of peace. If you let go completely, you'll be free. When the next wave of anxiety rises, whether it's a faint ripple or a surging tide, Try meeting it with this profound gentleness. Whisper to yourself with quiet conviction, this too is just a thought. There is no battle to be waged, no desperate flight to be initiated, merely a soft, truthful whisper resonating at the very heart of the storm. This simple act of non identification is the first step towards realizing that the storm is not you and you are not the storm. You are the vast, silent awareness that holds it all, building upon the liberating insight that this too is just a thought. We delve deeper into its profound implications by exploring the concept of non identification. This isn't about denying the existence of your thoughts or emotions, but rather recognizing that they are not in their essence who you are. For those who find themselves caught in the relentless grip of anxiety, understanding this distinction is like stepping out of a suffocating cloud and realizing you are the vast open sky, eternally untouched by the passing weather. Imagine your consciousness as a boundless, unblemished mirror. Thoughts, feelings, sensations, and even anxieties are simply reflections appearing on its surface. A beautiful image might appear, then a disturbing one. The mirror itself, however, remains pristine, unaffected by the images it reflects. It doesn't become the image, nor is it harmed by it. Similarly, your true essence, your awareness is the mirror. Your thoughts and anxieties are merely the reflections. When we fail to recognize this, we mistakenly identify with the reflections, believing we are the anxiety, the anger, or the sadness. This false identification is the source of much unnecessary suffering. This practice of non identification allows for a crucial liberating distance to open between your core self and the often overwhelming contents of your mind. It's the wisdom of knowing that your thoughts are movements in the mind, much like wind passing through the leaves of a tree. Some of these movements are helpful, offering clarity or inspiration. Others are unhelpful, generating worry or agitation. But none of them, regardless of their intensity or apparent truth, define your unchanging essence, your fundamental being. Consider Eleanor, a woman in her early 80s, who had always defined herself by her sharp intellect and formidable memory. As she began to experience the natural subtle shifts that come with aging, a misplaced key, a forgotten name, a profound anxiety settled in. The thought, I am losing my mind, would repeatedly loop, accompanied by a cold dread. She intensely identified with her intellectual capabilities, and any perceived diminishment felt like an attack on her very self. When introduced to the practice of non identification, she began to gently observe these anxious thoughts without claiming them. Instead of, I am losing my mind, she learned to recognize a thought is arising. I am losing my mind. This subtle linguistic shift created a vast internal space. She realized the thought was merely a transient event, not an unchangeable truth about her being. This practice didn't magically restore her memory, but it profoundly alleviated the suffering and anxiety associated with her experience. She began to say, this thought is not me. It is just a thought. Historians still debate the precise relationship between the concept of anatta non-self in early Buddhism and its implications for personal identity and moral responsibility within ancient Indian philosophical discourse. However, its psychological application in cultivating detachment from suffering remains a core tenet. A humorous yet profoundly insightful anecdote, often attributed to Buddhist teachings, goes like this. A student approached his master complaining, "Master, I have so many terrible thoughts. They are always bothering me." The master listened patiently, then replied, "Ah, yes. And how often do you go bother them?" The student looked puzzled. The master smiled. "They are just thoughts. They only bother you if you go to them and engage them." The humor lies in our tendency to actively participate in our suffering by identifying with every passing mental event rather than simply letting them pass by. For those in their 60s and beyond, the practice of non identification offers immense solace. The challenges of aging often bring thoughts about loss, decline, and mortality. The temptation to identify with these thoughts, to believe I am old, I am frail, or I am alone, is powerful. But this practice invites you to observe these thoughts as they arise, recognize their transient nature, and gently remind yourself, this thought of decline is not me. This feeling of loneliness is not who I am. You are the awareness that observes the thought, not the thought itself. The practice then is not to suppress anxious thoughts, nor to shame yourself for having them. That only creates more tension. The true discipline is to see them clearly, to observe their nature, and to gently, compassionately say, "Ah, I see you, thought. You are trying to protect me. You are trying to warn me. But you are not reality, and you are not in control of my deepest essence." This represents a subtle yet utterly transformative shift from being entirely submerged inside the thought, believing it to be you, to quietly standing beside it, observing its fleeting nature. This shift from identification to observation is everything. As the great teacher, Ajahn Chi once wisely remarked, "If you let go a little, you'll have a little peace. If you let go a lot, you'll have a lot of peace. If you let go completely, you'll be free." When the next wave of anxiety rises, try meeting it not with resistance or panic, but with this profound gentleness. Say to yourself with quiet conviction, "This thought is not me. It is just a thought." There is no battle to be waged, no desperate flight to be initiated, merely a soft, truthful whisper resonating at the very heart of the storm. This fundamental act of non identification is the profound liberation that reveals your true nature, vast, peaceful, and utterly unbound by the transient contents of your mind. As we continue to dismantle the subtle architecture of anxiety, having understood the power of non identification, we now turn to a critical, liberating truth: not every thought is true. This might seem obvious, yet our minds, particularly when anxiety is afoot, have a remarkable tendency to treat every internal whisper, every fleeting fear, every imagined scenario as if it were an undeniable objective fact. Learning to discern the true nature of thought is like gaining a magical key that unlocks the door to a calmer inner landscape. Imagine your mind as a bustling marketplace. Thoughts are like vendors, each loudly proclaiming their wares. Danger here. Regret this. What if that happens? If you believe and engage with every single vendor, buying into every story, your mind quickly becomes overwhelmed, chaotic, and filled with unnecessary burdens. But what if you could simply walk through the marketplace, observing the vendors, without needing to purchase everything they offer? What if you recognized that many of these pronouncements are just noise, not undeniable truths about reality? This is the essence of discerning the validity of your thoughts. When anxiety takes hold, it often does so by presenting a thought. A "what if I fall? What if I get sick? What if I'm forgotten?" and then demanding that you treat it as an immediate, unfolding reality. Your body reacts as if the perceived threat is happening now, even though it's merely a mental projection. The pervasive dread, the racing heart, the tight chest, these are often responses to a thought that is not in that moment true. The suffering comes from believing the thought, without question, from allowing it to dictate your reality. Consider Samuel, a retired architect in his late 70s who had always prided himself on his logical mind. Yet he found himself increasingly consumed by anxieties about potential financial ruin despite having a stable pension and savings. He would spend hours meticulously reviewing his statements, yet the thought, what if it's not enough? What if something unexpected happens? Would relentlessly loop. These were thoughts, projections of fear, not current realities. He believed them to be warnings, objective facts he must address rather than transient mental events. His anxiety was fueled by his unquestioning acceptance of these dire hypothetical scenarios as imminent truths rather than merely possibilities. Historians still debate the extent to which early Buddhist psychology, with its emphasis on discerning the nature of thought, influenced other ancient philosophical traditions that grappled with the problem of knowledge and illusion. The idea that internal experience could be misleading was a profound insight. A humorous, yet profoundly insightful anecdote from a meditation retreat goes like this. During a silent sitting session, a student kept fidgeting, clearly agitated. Afterwards, the teacher asked what was troubling him. The student exclaimed, "Master, my mind was full of thoughts. I kept thinking about the terrible argument I had yesterday." The teacher, with a gentle smile, replied, "Ah, yes. And who won the argument in your mind?" The student paused, then burst out laughing, realizing he had been locked in a furious mental battle, believing it to be a real, ongoing event. The humor lies in our tendency to recreate and resuffer past events simply by believing the thoughts about them are reality. For those in their 60s and beyond, this teaching is especially relevant. Decades of ingrained thinking patterns mean the mind is particularly adept at conjuring familiar worries. Memories of past difficulties, anticipations of future challenges, like health changes, or loss, and existential questions can surface with greater frequency. The temptation to fall into every thought, to believe its narrative, implicitly becomes stronger. But cultivating the understanding that not every thought is true allows you to create a crucial distance, a spacious buffer between your essential self and the mental activity. When anxiety arises, instead of being swept away by its compelling narrative, you can pause and ask, is this thought a fact, or is it a story my mind is telling me? Is this happening right now, or is it a projection into the future, or a replaying of the past? This gentle inquiry, rooted in that understanding that thoughts are not necessarily facts, allows you to loosen their grip. It's like discerning between a realistic painting and the actual landscape. One is a representation, the other is reality. The practice then is not to suppress these anxious thoughts, nor to shame yourself for having them. That only adds another layer of suffering. The true discipline is to observe them with a discerning eye, to acknowledge their presence without claiming them as your unwavering truth. It is to silently, compassionately say, "Ah, I see you, thought. You are here, but you are not reality, and you are not in control of my inner peace." This represents a subtle yet utterly transformative shift from being entirely submerged inside the compelling story of the thought to quietly standing beside it, observing its fleeting nature. This shift from unquestioning belief to discerning observation is everything, as the quiet wisdom of countless enlightened beings reminds us peace isn't found in a mind free of thoughts, but in a mind that doesn't cling to them. When the next wave of anxiety rises, try meeting it not with automatic belief or panic, but with this profound gentleness. Whisper to yourself with quiet conviction, this is just a thought, and not every thought is true. There is no battle to be waged, merely a soft, truthful whisper resonating at the very heart of the storm. This fundamental act of recognizing thoughts for what they are, transient mental events, is a powerful step towards realizing that the storm is not you and you are not the storm. You are the vast, silent awareness that holds it all unharmed by its passing. As we gently unhook ourselves from the ingrained habit of believing every thought that arises another profound liberation, emerges the power of letting go a little. This isn't about some grand sweeping gesture of spiritual detachment, but about the subtle, cumulative effect of countless tiny acts of release. For minds that have long been entangled in the relentless churn of anxiety, learning to let go a little is like gently unraveling a tightly wound ball of yarn thread by thread until its tension finally dissolves. Imagine a clenched fist. When held tight, the muscles strain, the knuckles whiten, and blood flow is restricted. The tighter the grip, the greater the discomfort. Anxiety is often like this, a persistent mental clenching, holding on to worries, regrets, or fears with intense pressure. Letting go a little means simply relaxing that grip just a tiny bit, not forcing the hand wide open, but allowing a millimeter of space to emerge between the fingers. In that minuscule space, immense relief can begin to flow. This practice acknowledges the human tendency to hold on. We are wired for security, for certainty, for control. But when these instincts lead to constant internal tension, the wisdom lies in learning to counterbalance them with small conscious acts of release. It's understanding that peace isn't found in a perpetual struggle, but in the subtle art of yielding. Consider Florence, a woman in her late 70s, who had always been known for her meticulous attention to detail, a trait that had served her well in her career as an accountant. In retirement, this quality morphed into a pervasive anxiety about every minor household task. She would fret endlessly over dust motes, the alignment of books on a shelf, or whether her plants were perfectly watered. Her mind was constantly clenching around these trivial details, creating a disproportionate amount of stress. When introduced to the idea of letting go a little, she started with one small thing, allowing a single book to be slightly askew, then a single dust mot. The anxiety didn't vanish instantly, but with each tiny deliberate act of releasing her grip on perfection, she felt a subtle easing, a breath of spaciousness enter her mind. Over time, these small acts accumulated into a profound reduction of her overall anxiety. Historians still debate the practical methodologies employed by early Buddhist teachers to introduce complex concepts like letting go to lay practitioners in simple, accessible ways. Was it primarily through parables, direct instruction, or a combination of subtle behavioral suggestions integrated into daily life? The effectiveness of incremental small steps seems universally recognized. A humorous, yet profoundly insightful anecdote from Zen tradition speaks of a young monk who was complaining about the constant buzzing of flies in the meditation hall. "Master," he wailed, "I cannot concentrate. These flies are driving me mad." The master, without opening his eyes, simply said, "Ah, yes. And how many of them do you think you have to kill before you can meditate?" The monk, perplexed, replied, "None, master, but they distract me." The master then said, "Then why are you trying to kill them in your mind? Just let go of the idea that they shouldn't be there." The humor lies in our tendency to create internal battles, even with external, uncontrollable annoyances, when simply letting go of the resistance is the key. For those in their 60s and beyond, the concept of letting go a little is profoundly liberating. The accumulated expectations of a lifetime, the rigidities of habit, and the heightened awareness of life's transitions can create a deeply entrenched sense of anxiety. Perhaps it's the anxiety about maintaining a certain image or a specific level of independence or a particular standard of cleanliness. These aren't inherently bad desires, but the clinging to them, the inability to let them go even slightly, creates immense internal pressure. This practice invites you to identify one small thing you are holding on to tightly right now. It could be a minor worry about an upcoming appointment, a fleeting irritation about a past comment, or a slight discomfort in your body that your mind is magnifying. Instead of engaging with it, feeding it, or fighting it, simply say to yourself, "I will let go of this just a little." It's not about achieving a perfect state of non attachment immediately. It's about cultivating the intention to release, to soften, to yield. When you practice this, even for a moment, you create a tiny pocket of freedom within your mind. In that space, the relentless grip of anxiety finds less purchase. You begin to experience that peace isn't an elusive destination, but a state that emerges naturally when you gently release your internal burdens. It's a continuous, compassionate invitation to shed what doesn't serve you, one tiny act of release at a time. The cumulative effect of these small acts is not merely a reduction in anxiety, but a profound transformation of your relationship with life itself, allowing you to move through its currents with increasing ease and inner grace. As we progressively release our tight hold on our thoughts and learn the gentle art of letting go, the path naturally leads us to a profound practice that grounds us firmly in the here and now, mindfulness, samasati. This isn't some mystical, elusive state reserved for seasoned meditators. It's a simple, yet utterly transformative way of paying attention to the present moment deliberately and without judgment. For those who find their minds constantly pulled into the anxieties of the past or the uncertainties of the future, cultivating mindfulness is like dropping a heavy anchor in turbulent waters, allowing your internal vessel to find stability. Imagine your mind as a restless puppy constantly chasing after squirrels of thought, barking at shadows of worry, and digging up buried bones of regret. It's exhausting for both the puppy and its owner. Mindfulness is like gently calling that puppy back, giving it a comforting pat, and inviting it to simply rest at your feet, right here, right now. It's about being aware of where your feet are, rather than constantly being lost in yesterday's memories or tomorrow's fears. Anxiety, by its very nature, is a future-oriented emotion. It's the mind trying to predict, to protect, to prepare for what might happen. It pulls you away from the warmth and immediacy of the present moment into the cold, speculative corridors of what ifs. This is why the Buddha's timeless teaching directly addresses the heart of anxiety. Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment. This isn't a command, it's an invitation to liberation from the relentless mental churning that fuels worry. Consider George a retired carpenter in his early 80s, a quiet and gentle soul by nature. After his beloved wife passed, the profound stillness that settled over their once lively house began to feel less like a comforting sanctuary and more like a resonant echo chamber. Small worries, once fleeting, transformed into spiraling anxieties. What if I forget something crucial? What if I fall and no one discovers me for days? What if I become an unwanted burden to my children? These persistent thoughts, like tenacious roots, began to embed themselves deeply within the empty hours of his day, pulling him into a state of chronic unease. George's doctor, observing his growing distress, had gently suggested he explore a local mindfulness meditation group at the community center. Though initially skeptical, George, in his quiet determination, decided to give it a try. During his very first session, the instructor offered a profoundly simple instruction. Simply sit, gently close your eyes, and just follow the natural current of your breath. Do not attempt to alter it. Do not force it into a particular rhythm. Just notice it. George later recounted his initial experience. At first, all I could truly discern was the overwhelming clamor of my own thoughts. They were so loud, so insistent, like a constant chatter. But gradually, as I persisted, I began to notice the subtle intake and outflow of my breath, then the distant chorus of birdsong outside my window, and then surprisingly the gentle warmth radiating in my hands. That he reflected his voice softer was the pivotal turning point. Historians still debate the extent to which early Buddhist communities integrated formal sitting meditation, like that practiced by George, with informal moment to moment mindfulness in daily activities, and how quickly such practices were expected to yield results for lay practitioners. However, the consistent emphasis on present moment awareness is clear. A humorous little known anecdote from a Zen story highlights this. A student, frustrated with his meditation, asked his master, "Master, how do I get rid of all these thoughts?" The master replied, "Just watch them." The student tried again, "But they're so distracting, how do I make them stop?" The master looked at him and said, "My dear friend, you can't stop the birds from flying over your head, but you can stop them from building a nest in your hair." The humor lies in the futile attempt to control thoughts directly rather than simply changing our relationship to them through mindful observation. For those in their 60s and beyond, the practice of mindfulness offers an incredibly potent antidote to anxiety. With the pace of life often slowing, there can be more space for rumination. However, this also means more opportunity to cultivate presence. The anxiety that arises now, perhaps about health, financial security, or the loss of loved ones, is often intensified by the mind's tendency to project into an uncertain future or dwell on a vanished past. Mindfulness gently pulls you back to the only moment you ever truly have this one. When you practice mindfulness, you aren't trying to empty your mind or force stillness. You are simply becoming intimate with what is happening right now. You notice with loving attention the sensations in your body, the flow of your breath, the rise and fall of your thoughts, without getting caught in their narratives. Each breath becomes an anchor, each step a meditation, each moment an invitation to return. If your mind drifts into thought, that's perfectly okay. The moment you notice that drift, you've already returned. That noticing is the practice, that return is the victory. So if anxiety visits you in the quiet of your days, offer it no battle. Instead, offer your breath. Anchor yourself in what you can feel: your feet on the floor, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the rhythm of your inhale and exhale. This isn't denial. It's not escape. It's a sacred act of returning to the undeniable reality of this moment, which is the only place where true peace ever lives. Following the anchoring power of mindfulness, we discover another profound source of inner peace: compassion, karuna, particularly the radical act of extending kindness to ourselves. There's a quiet, relentless voice that often accompanies anxiety, and it doesn't belong to the world outside us. It belongs to our own internal critic, endlessly whispering judgments. Why are you like this? You should be stronger. You're such a burden. Over time, that voice, insidious and persistent, wears down the spirit not just with fear, but with a deep, pervasive sense of shame. But in the timeless teachings of the Buddha, there exists a gentle, yet profoundly revolutionary antidote: compassion, and not just for others, but most vitally for ourselves. Imagine your inner world as a garden. The critical inner voice is like a persistent weed, constantly trying to choke out the delicate blooms of peace and self-worth. Compassion is the gentle gardener, weeding out the harsh self-judgments and nurturing the seeds of kindness and acceptance. When we are compassionate towards ourselves, we create an internal climate where anxiety, deprived of the harsh soil of self criticism, struggles to take root. You see, many individuals, particularly those who grew up in earlier generations, were often raised in a time when emotional needs were quietly, implicitly silenced. Resilience was often equated with stoicism, with an unyielding toughness, and self sacrifice was frequently seen as the highest virtue. You cared for everyone else: your children, your spouse, your aging parents, your community, while quietly shelving your own fatigue, your own pain, your own deep seated needs. And perhaps now, in this later chapter of life, when you finally have the space, the quiet breathing room to truly feel everything you meticulously postponed, can rush in. Anxiety alongside guilt, long held grief, and deep regret can surface with an unexpected intensity, feeling overwhelming. But here is the profound truth that Buddhist wisdom gently unveils: the path to genuine lasting peace is not meticulously paved with the bricks of unattainable perfection. Instead, it is tenderly, patiently walked with the soft, understanding steps of tenderness. The Buddha, in a remarkably liberating statement that echoes through the centuries, declared, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." These words are not an indulgence, not a permission slip for selfishness. They are at their very core a profound lifeline for the weary soul, a radical act of self acceptance in a world that often demands perfection. Consider the story of Eleanor, a woman of 79 years who had devoted the vast majority of her life to the nurturing and care of others. By profession, she was a dedicated nurse, and by her very nature, a devoted mother and community pillar. She had always been perceived as the bedrock of strength, the unwavering and dependable presence for everyone around her. But after her retirement, and especially following the profound, aching loss of her beloved sister, Eleanor began experiencing unexpected waves of anxiety. She felt a deep sense of foolishness, even a quiet embarrassment. Why now? She would repeatedly ask herself, her voice tinged with perplexity and self reproach. I have always managed to keep it all together to be the strong one. During a restorative mindfulness retreat held at a local community center, a compassionate Buddhist teacher extended a simple yet profoundly powerful invitation to the assembled group. She asked them to gently place their hands over their hearts, a physical gesture of warmth and self connection, and silently repeat a phrase that resonated with profound kindness. May I be kind to myself in this moment. May I accept myself just as I am. At first, Eleanor found herself utterly unable to fully embrace the exercise. Her chest tightened with resistance, and unexpected tears welled in her eyes. The sensation felt foreign, almost selfish, like something she wasn't allowed to do. But the teacher, with a gentle, understanding gaze, reminded her self compassion is not about feeding the ego, it is about softening. It is about refusing to turn away from your own pain, however uncomfortable or vulnerable it may feel. That quiet moment, a subtle shift in perspective, marked the true genesis of Eleanor's healing journey. Not because the anxiety magically vanished, but because she no longer felt compelled to fight it in solitary isolation. She began to embark on a practice of writing gentle, understanding letters to herself, forgiving the parts of her being that had been too utterly exhausted to continue some days, too profoundly overwhelmed to articulate their distress, too deeply wounded to reach out for connection. And slowly, patiently, with each act of self kindness, she began to experience the profound sensation of becoming whole once more. Historians still debate the specific evolution of self compassion practices within early Buddhist traditions, wondering if they were explicitly taught as a distinct practice or emerged organically from broader ethical and meditative cultivation. However, the direct application of universal compassion to the self was clearly understood as essential for liberation. A humorous and yet deeply insightful anecdote from a meditation teacher often goes like this. A student asked, Master, I am so hard on myself. My inner critic is relentless. How do I silence it? The master replied, Do you try to hit your shadow with a stick? The student shook his head. Why not? Asked the master. Because it follows me, no matter what I do, the student said. The master smiled, and does your inner critic follow you? Then why do you fight it? Just turn around and give it a hug. The humor lies in our futile struggle against an internal part of ourselves, when acceptance and kindness are the true path to softening it. In Buddhist practice, compassion, particularly self compassion, is revered as a potent medicine for the heart. And like any beneficial medicine, it must be administered with regularity consistently, especially when the familiar symptoms of suffering, like anxiety, begin to make their presence known. Here are a few gentle, accessible ways you can weave the practice of self compassion into the fabric of your daily existence. Speak to yourself with profound kindness, especially during moments when you feel afraid or consumed by anxiety. Replace the harsh, self critical question, What is inherently wrong with me? With a gentler, more understanding affirmation. This is a challenging moment, and I am navigating it with the best of my abilities. I am doing enough. During those moments when anxiety tightens its grip, gently place your hand over your heart. This simple physical gesture serves as a powerful immediate reminder of care, a tangible affirmation that you are not in this moment abandoned or alone. It's a way to send warmth directly to your own tender places. Extend to yourself the same measure of grace and understanding you would unreservedly offer to a cherished friend. If you wouldn't utter those harsh, critical words to someone you deeply care for someone you love, then do not permit them to echo within the sacred sanctuary of your own mind. Treat yourself as your dearest friend. Consciously acknowledge your resilience and effort. You have, against considerable odds, endured so much throughout your life. You are at every turn continuing to learn, to grow, to evolve. And that inherent capacity for growth, for simply showing up, truly matters, regardless of perceived imperfections. Compassion, in its profound essence, does not magically fix every external challenge or miraculously erase every difficulty. However, it profoundly transforms the manner in which we move through every experience. It takes anxiety, which can often feel like an inescapable prison, and transmutes it into a navigable path, a gentle journey. It creates a path that walks tenderly alongside your pain, not in harsh opposition to it. Thich Nhat Hanh, with his characteristic gentle wisdom, once observed, "When you love someone, the best thing you can offer is your presence. How can you love if you are not there?" This profound truth extends with equal validity to ourselves. If we are not willing to be truly present for our own internal suffering, who then will be? So the next time the subtle knocking of anxiety makes its presence known at the door of your consciousness, consider meeting it not with immediate rejection or fierce opposition, but with a profound unconditional kindness. Offer it metaphorically a warm cup of tea. Sit beside it, not in fear, but with an open, understanding curiosity. Gently inquire, "What is it you truly need from me in this moment?" Not with the intention of immediately fixing or eradicating its presence, but simply to hold it gently, with the same tender understanding you would offer a small child who is frightened and trembling in the enveloping darkness. For sometimes all our intricate inner world truly requires is the comforting assurance that someone, a compassionate listener, is still present, still attuned to its quiet cries. As we embrace the gentle balm of self-compassion, we arrive at the very thought that, when truly internalized, possesses the power to dismantle anxiety at its core. This is not mine. This is not me. This is not who I am. There are moments in life, quiet, yet intensely piercing moments, when anxiety wraps itself around us so tightly that we begin to believe it defines us. The rapid thrum of the heartbeat, the relentless spinning of thoughts, the pervasive inner tension, the sensations can start to feel less like something we are merely experiencing and more like the very fabric of who we inherently are. In those moments, it becomes distressingly simple to whisper to oneself, "I am anxious," instead of seeing anxiety for what it truly is, a passing cloud, not the boundless sky itself. Imagine your consciousness as an immense open sky, vast and unblemished. Thoughts, feelings, and sensations are like clouds drifting across its infinite expanse. A dark, stormy cloud of worry might appear heavy with fear. A light, airy cloud of joy might follow. But fundamentally, the clouds are not the sky itself. They are transient phenomena appearing and disappearing, while the sky remains vast, unchanging, and utterly unaffected by their passing. When anxiety takes hold, we often forget we are the sky and mistakenly identify ourselves as the storm becoming overwhelmed by the very clouds that merely pass through. The thought, "This is not mine, this is not me, this is not who I am," is the gentle yet profound reminder that you are the spacious sky, not the fleeting cloud. But over 2,500 years ago, the enlightened one, the Buddha, presented a profound teaching that can unhook us from this suffering. It is a thought so unassuming yet so utterly powerful it can dissolve the tenacious hold of anxiety like the morning sun dissipating a dense fog. This trio of phrases is not intended as an act of denial, a forceful rejection of a present reality. On the contrary, its profound purpose is one of liberation. It doesn't attempt to push anxiety away with a rigid resistance creating further internal friction. Instead, it gently releases the deeply ingrained false belief that you are in your essence inextricably bound to your suffering. In the revered Buddhist text, the Anatalakkhana Sutta, the discourse on non self characteristics, the Buddha meticulously expounds upon the concept of anatta, or non self. This foundational idea asserts that we are not in our deepest truth, the thoughts, the transient feelings, or the fleeting sensations that simply move through our consciousness. Just as the boundless sky is not the storm that momentarily rages within it, we are not in our fundamental nature, our anxiety. When we cling desperately to fear, erroneously believing that it constitutes an integral part of our identity, it gains an immense and formidable power over us. But when we calmly and unequivocally utter the words, "This is not me," we are gently reminded of our true expansive nature, a nature that is inherently vast, profoundly peaceful, and utterly unbound by fleeting internal states. Let's ground this profound teaching in a relatable, real life narrative. Consider the journey of Samuel, an 82-year-old widower who had been in a quiet, persistent battle with anxiety ever since the passing of his beloved wife. He often described it as an inexplicable, annoying feeling lodged deep within his chest, a sense of dread he couldn't quite name. It would come and go, but when it was there, it overtook everything, even his sense of self. "It feels like I'm vanishing into the fear," he once confessed, his voice tinged with a deep weariness. One gentle afternoon, during a local mindfulness gathering, the instructor led a guided reflection based on the Buddha's timeless teaching of non identification. She guided the participants through successive waves of physical sensations and emotional currents, softly, repeatedly intoning the liberating phrase, "This is not mine, this is not me, this is not who I am." Samuel sat quietly, his hand resting instinctively over his heart, silently echoing the words within his own mind. As the persistent tension in his chest began almost imperceptibly to yield and loosen its grip, something profound shifted within him. It wasn't an immediate dramatic transformation, but it was enough. Enough for him to draw a slightly deeper, more expansive breath. In the weeks that followed, Samuel began to integrate this simple practice into his daily routine. Whenever anxiety made its familiar appearance, instead of engaging in a fruitless struggle or collapsing under its perceived weight, he would acknowledge it with a gentle, discerning awareness. "Ah, here it is again," he would mentally note. Then he would consciously deepen his breath and lovingly remind himself, "This too will pass. This is not who I am." And with each mindful repetition, each gentle act of non identification, the internal storm, though still present, began to rage a little less fiercely. Its power to consume him incrementally diminished. Historians still debate the specific methods by which the Buddha's revolutionary concept of non self was introduced to the diverse lay populace, and how quickly it was adopted as a practical tool for daily well being versus a deeper philosophical insight. However, its direct utility in psychological liberation is widely acknowledged. A humorous yet profoundly insightful anecdote, often attributed to Zen masters, highlights this point. A student constantly troubled by his wandering mind during meditation asked his master, "Master, how do I get rid of all these thoughts?" The master looked at him kindly and said, "My dear student, you don't get rid of them. You simply recognize them as guests, and then you don't serve them tea." The humor lies in our tendency to engage and feed every thought that comes our way, giving it power when simply observing it, without engagement, is the path to freedom. The profound beauty of this ancient teaching is that it doesn't promise the disappearance of anxiety. It offers something far more precious and enduring freedom within the experience of it. The Buddha never proclaimed that we would navigate life entirely devoid of fear or sorrow. However, he did illuminate a path, a profound methodology for how not to suffer unnecessarily because of them. Let's meticulously unpack the layers of this liberating phrase. This is not mine. This powerful assertion implies that we do not, in fact, own the emotion. It's not our personal possession, something we are obligated to protect, defend, or hold on to. It's just something arising, like a passing wave on the vast impersonal ocean. It's an experience, not an inherent quality of your being. This is not me. This statement points directly to the deepest, most foundational truth of our existence. We are not in our essence defined by this fleeting emotion. We are not inherently broken, nor are we fundamentally flawed by its presence. We are the calm, unwavering observer, not the turbulence itself. We are the container, not the content. This is not who I am. Our deepest identity, our true nature, is not constituted by fear, by anxiety, or by sorrow. Beneath all the surface fluctuations of thought and emotion, there lies our inherent awareness, a presence that remains still profoundly compassionate and utterly steady. It is the core of peace that is always available. If you choose to experiment with this profound practice, the next time anxiety visits, simply pause. Take a moment and with gentle yet firm conviction, say to yourself, "This is not mine. This is not me. This is not who I am." You may begin to notice something truly remarkable. The emotion in its raw form may still be present, a discernible sensation. However, its formidable power to define you, to consume your sense of self, will begin to subtly, yet perceptibly fade. You will experience a profound shift from being entirely submerged within the storm to recognizing yourself as the expansive, unshakable sky that effortlessly holds it. The understanding that this is not mine, this is not me, this is not who I am, isn't merely a concept to ponder in moments of quiet contemplation. It is a powerful lighthouse in the fog, a reliable compass when you feel utterly lost within the vast, sometimes turbulent currents of your mind. As we gather more years, as the tapestry of our lives becomes richer and more complex, this profound insight becomes not just helpful, but absolutely essential for navigating the ever-changing landscape of existence, especially after 60. Imagine a seasoned mariner having navigated countless seas. They know that storms will inevitably come, that the waters will sometimes be calm and sometimes treacherous. Their peace doesn't come from a magical ability to control the weather, but from knowing their vessel, understanding the currents, and possessing a reliable compass that always points true north, regardless of the tempest around them. This mantra, "This is not mine, this is not me, this is not who I am," serves as that unwavering compass for your inner world. Aging in its undeniable wisdom brings with it new uncertainties, unexpected moments of quiet loneliness, the subtle shifts and sometimes pronounced challenges of changing bodies, and the inevitable tender goodbyes to loved ones and familiar ways of life. These are the natural currents of life, not punishments. And here's the crucial truth: none of these natural processes diminish who you truly are. None of them lessen your inherent wholeness, your fundamental worth, or the luminous essence of your being. Consider a beautiful ancient tree. As it ages, its bark might wrinkle, some branches may gracefully fall away, but its roots grow deeper, its core remains strong, and its wisdom becomes palpable. Its essence as a tree remains untouched by the passage of time. So too with you. The outward forms may change, but the core of who you are, your awareness, your capacity for compassion, your inherent peace, remains utterly unbroken, untarnished. Historians still debate the extent to which the emphasis on non self in Buddhist philosophy was primarily a meditative insight, or also served a social function, helping individuals detach from the suffering caused by societal expectations and personal loss in communities where life was often fragile. What is clear is its profound psychological utility. A humorous yet deeply poignant anecdote, often told in the context of aging, comes from a wise elder. He was asked, "What is the hardest thing about growing old?" He paused, then chuckled, remembering to ask myself, "Is this my worry or just a worry that has arrived?" The humor lies in the persistent human habit of immediately claiming every anxious thought as our own when it is simply a passing mental event, especially as the mind becomes a well worn path for old anxieties. The thought, "This is not mine, this is not me, this is not who I am," isn't just a mantra to be pulled out during moments of acute panic or overwhelming distress. It is in its essence a continuous quiet practice for liberation. It's a constant reclaiming of your innate inner space, a gentle yet firm remembering of your deepest essence, peaceful, aware, and eternal. Because in truth, you are never fundamentally your anxiety. You are the profound calm that remains when the wave of emotion gracefully recedes. You are the boundless sky that serenely holds every fleeting passing cloud unaffected by their journey. You are in every sacred unfolding moment still profoundly and completely here. This practice allows you to witness the fluctuations of your inner world with a quiet detachment, much like watching a play unfold on a stage. You can see the characters of worry, fear, and sadness act out their scenes, but you remember that you are the audience, not the characters. You are the one who observes, not the one who is consumed by the drama. This distance is not coldness, it is clarity. It is the wisdom that frees you from the burden of identifying with every fleeting internal state. So, as you continue to navigate the remaining years of your life, embrace this profound truth. When a new anxiety whispers its name, or an old worry resurfaces with stubborn persistence, meet it with this liberating insight. It is the ultimate boundary, the gentle declaration that protects your inner sanctuary from the storms that pass through. It is the wisdom that reminds you always of your enduring wholeness. Now that we've deeply explored the profound thought, this is not mine, this is not me, this is not who I am, it's time to bridge this ancient wisdom into the very fabric of your daily existence. It's one thing to hear a teaching that stirs the heart that feels true, like a refreshing breeze through an open window after a long, stuffy silence. But it's another thing entirely to carry that teaching into the practicalities of everyday life, where the dishes inevitably pile up the phone rings with unexpected news. The gentle aches of age remind you of time's quiet hand, and the heart, oh, the heart still sometimes trembles with a lingering unease. This beloved friend is precisely where the real transformative work begins. And it is also within this consistent, gentle engagement that the greatest, most enduring peace can truly be found. Imagine you've discovered a beautiful, precious gem. It's wonderful to admire its sparkle in a quiet, illuminated room, but its true value lies in wearing it, allowing its beauty to accompany you through every aspect of your day. This liberating thought is precisely that kind of gem. The Buddha was never interested in lofty abstract ideas for their own sake divorced from the lived human experience. His profound wisdom was always meant to be integrated and lived in the bustling marketplace, within the intimate sanctuary of the home, and along the winding paths through the forest. And so, this powerful and liberating trio of phrases, this is not mine, this is not me, this is not who I am, is not just something to recall during formal meditation or while absorbed in spiritual texts. It is vitally something to bring with you consciously into the glorious mess and the quiet miracles of every single day. Let's begin simply with a practice that is both remarkably gentle and profoundly powerful. It's something you can engage in even now as you quietly absorb these words. Find a moment to consciously pause. Settle yourself quietly, whether sitting or if standing. Allow your feet to rest fully and firmly upon the earth. Allow your body to simply be exactly as it is, without any need for forced adjustments or artificial postures. Now breathe in slowly, deliberately, and then exhale just as unhurriedly. Allow your breath to become like a soft, reassuring hand gently placed upon your back, a steady anchor, a comforting presence that grounds you in the immediate now. Next, gently call to mind something that has been a source of anxiety for you. It could be a minor worry, a persistent hum that lingers like an unwelcome background noise, or perhaps something more substantial, a significant decision weighing heavily on your mind, a past regret that still echoes, or a challenging conversation that continues to replay itself within your inner world. Do not for a moment judge its presence or its nature. Simply hold it gently within the expansive field of your awareness, much like you might cradle a smooth stone in the open palm of your hand, observing it without judgment. As you sit with this feeling, whatever its texture or intensity, begin to softly articulate, either aloud in a whisper or silently within the sanctuary of your heart, the phrase, "This is not mine." Pause. Allow the profound truth of those words to gently settle within your being. Then continue, "This is not me." Pause once more. Feel the subtle yet perceptible distance begin to open between your essential self and the transient emotion. Finally affirm, "This is not who I am," and breathe. With each repetition, with each gentle whisper of these words, feel the anxious grip begin to subtly loosen. Perhaps it's just a minuscule shift at first, a barely perceptible easing, or perhaps it's a more profound release. The essence of this practice is not to deny the feeling itself, rather, it is to witness its presence without claiming it, without allowing it to define or become your inherent self. Now imagine your breath as a gentle, consistent current of air moving freely through an open, spacious house. It flows effortlessly through the room where your worry currently resides, gently airing it out, creating space. It's not forcefully pushing anything away. It's simply allowing for greater spaciousness. The sturdy walls of the house remain standing. That house is you, stable, deeply rooted, and inherently whole. The anxious thought then is merely a guest, a temporary visitor. It might linger for a while, but it does not reside there permanently, and it certainly does not own the keys to your inner sanctuary. This, then, is the profound power inherent in this simple yet transformative practice. Historians still debate the precise methods used by ancient Buddhist practitioners to integrate deep philosophical insights into their mundane daily activities and how much formal meditation was required versus simply mindful living. Regardless, the intention to bring wisdom to every moment was paramount. A humorous yet profoundly insightful anecdote from a Zen story highlights this practical application. A student asked his master, "Master, how do I find enlightenment?" The master replied, "Do you have any food?" The student said, "Yes." The master said, "Then go eat it, and then when you're finished, wash your bowl." The humor lies in the directness, the emphasis on the sacredness of ordinary actions, free from the striving of a separate spiritual quest. For those in their 60s and beyond, this practical application of the liberating thought becomes truly transformative. You don't need to be on a meditation cushion or in a retreat center to awaken peace. You need it most acutely at 3:00 a.m. when you awaken with an inexplicable heaviness pressing upon your chest. You need it when your adult child hasn't reached out in weeks and the quiet whisper of, "Did I do something wrong?" begins to insinuate itself into your thoughts. You need it when the familiar ache in your joints serves as a stark reminder that time is relentlessly marching forward and that not every aspect of life remains within the comforting confines of your control. In these very moments, resist the impulse to strive for an unattainable perfection. Instead, reach for the profound simplicity of presence. Inhale deeply. Say gently, "This is not mine." Exhale slowly, "This is not me." Inhale once more, "This is not who I am." Then, with that renewed sense of internal spaciousness, return your attention to whatever is immediately before you. The warm texture of the cup you are washing, the soft folds of the blanket you are tending to, the gentle comfort of petting your beloved pet, or simply the soothing sound of the wind weaving its way through the trees just outside your window. In this subtle yet consistent manner, the practice ceases to be a separate, isolated act. It organically transforms into a deeply ingrained way of being, a mindful manner of walking through the entirety of your life. And here lies the truly beautiful, liberating aspect of this consistent engagement. The more you consciously engage with this practice, the more your intricate nervous system begins to internalize a profound message. It begins to understand on a very fundamental level that you are safe now. You are not trapped in the unyielding grip of the past. You are not drowning in the speculative currents of what ifs. You are in this very moment, right here, breathing vibrantly alive and utterly whole. As you diligently integrate the liberating thought, "This is not mine, this is not me," This is not who I am. Into the quiet fabric of your days, something truly remarkable begins to unfurl within your nervous system. It's like a deep, ancient sigh of relief for your entire being. The more you consciously apply this gentle wisdom, the more your nervous system, the very core of your physiological response to life, starts to understand a profound message: you are safe now. You are not endlessly trapped in the unyielding grip of the past, nor are you drowning in the speculative, often terrifying currents of what ifs that swirl about the future. You are in this very moment, right here, breathing vibrantly alive and utterly whole. Imagine your nervous system as a finely tuned instrument constantly scanning for danger. When anxiety is present, it's as if that instrument is stuck on a high alert setting, constantly sounding alarms, even when there's no immediate threat. This consistent state of hypervigilance is exhausting and physically taxing. But when you repeatedly offer the liberating thought, it acts like a gentle hand, adjusting the tuning dial, bringing it back to a state of calm. Your nervous system learns that the perceived threats are often just thoughts, not immediate realities, and it gradually releases its chronic tension. The physiological responses, the racing heart, the tight chest, the shallow breath begin to soften, aligning with the deeper truth of your present safety. This profound recalibration of your inner landscape is beautifully captured by the words of the Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh, a beacon of peace and mindfulness in our modern world, who once wrote, "The present moment is filled with joy and happiness. If you are attentive, you will see it." This isn't a platitude, it's an invitation to a direct experiential reality. The liberating phrase, "This is not mine, this is not me, this is not who I am," is not just a shield against anxiety. It's a powerful bridge, a gentle pathway back to that inherent joy, that quiet contentment that resides in the present moment, simply waiting for your attentive presence. It's a quiet invitation to remember that the real you, the enduring essence of your being, has never, not for a single moment, been broken or diminished by fear. Consider Anna, a woman in her early 70s who had lived a life of constant self reliance. While admirable, it had also ingrained a deep seated anxiety about any perceived loss of independence. As she grew older, thoughts of needing help or becoming physically frail sent her nervous system into overdrive, manifesting as restless nights and chronic muscle tension. When she began to practice, "This is not me," gently observing these fear based thoughts as separate from her core self, something profound shifted. Her physical body, which had been bracing against a future threat that wasn't yet present, began to relax. Her sleep improved, and the constant tension in her shoulders softened. Her nervous system was learning that even if her body changed, she was still whole, and the fear of future dependence was just a thought, not her reality. Historians still debate the extent to which early Buddhist physiological insights correlated with modern understandings of the nervous system, given their focus on subjective experience rather than empirical science. However, the observable effects of these practices on calm and well being have been consistent for millennia. A humorous, yet deeply insightful anecdote often shared in mindfulness circles tells of a very anxious man who, after years of worrying about everything, finally approached a wise woman. "I'm so worried," he said. "I worry about everything under the sun." The wise woman looked at him kindly. "Tell me," she said, "do you also worry about the moon?" The man paused, then chuckled. No, why would I worry about the moon? The wise woman smiled. Ah, you see, the moon is fine doing what the moon does. What if your worries were like the moon, just something to observe, not something to carry? The humor highlights our capacity to choose what we engage with and how much unnecessary burden we create by constantly involving our nervous system in hypothetical scenarios. For those in their 60s and beyond, this profound shift in the nervous system is truly transformative. As we age, our bodies inevitably become more sensitive to stress, and chronic anxiety can take a significant toll on physical health and quality of life. But by regularly practicing this non identification, you offer your entire being a chance to step out of constant alarm mode. You are retraining your system to respond to genuine threats rather than reacting to every fleeting thought. The beauty of this is that it doesn't require immense effort, but consistent gentleness. Each time anxiety shows up, instead of running from it, instead of resisting it, welcome it like a visitor you no longer fear. Offer it a quiet seat within your awareness. Look it gently in the eye and with profound tenderness, remind both the feeling and yourself, this is not who I am, because who you truly are is the stillness that rests serenely beneath the storm, the boundless space that encompasses the noise, and the unwavering love that always and eternally holds it all within its embrace. This isn't just a mental exercise, it's a profound physiological repatterning, guiding your body and mind back to their natural state of peace and ease. So, if you've journeyed with me this far, quietly listening, your heart perhaps a little softened by the path we've walked, I invite you now to pause for a moment. Just breathe, because what you've heard today isn't merely a teaching, a collection of ancient words. It's a doorway, a gentle hand resting on your shoulder, reminding you of a profound truth. Anxiety is not a failure. It's not proof that something is inherently wrong with you or that you've somehow fallen short. It is in many ways a sacred call, a quiet invitation to look more deeply within, to compassionately release what was never truly yours to carry, and to finally gently come back home to the vast, peaceful sanctuary of your own being. Imagine yourself standing at the threshold of a beautiful, sun-drenched temple. Outside, a storm may be raging, the winds of worry, the rain of regret, the thunder of fear. For too long, perhaps, you've believed you are the storm or that you must fight it to find peace. But this ancient wisdom reveals that you are the temple itself, vast and unshakable, and the storm is simply passing outside. You don't need to defeat the storm to find peace. You simply need to remember where you truly are. The Buddha, in his profound compassion, never promised a life utterly devoid of storms. He never suggested that challenges would cease or that sorrow would never visit. But what he offered was infinitely more powerful, more enduring, the profound tools, the inner wisdom to remain steady, grounded, and peaceful within the storm regardless of its intensity. And among these life-changing tools, one stands out for its directness and transformative power, the simple yet revolutionary thought, this is not mine, this is not me, this is not who I am. Consider the cumulative effect of these teachings. We began by acknowledging the very nature of anxiety as an uninvited guest, yet one that can be understood. We peeled back the layers to reveal its roots in our clinging to what is pleasant and our aversion to what is unpleasant, recognizing that change, not permanence, is life's only constant. We saw how the illusion of control fuels our fears, and how releasing that tight grip opens the door to immense freedom. Then we discovered the radical wisdom of non identification, the understanding that our thoughts are passing clouds, not the sky itself, and that this too is just a thought, is a profound liberation. We explored the anchoring power of mindfulness, gently bringing us back to the only moment that truly exists, the present. And finally, we embrace the radical healing balm of self compassion, the kindness that softens the inner critic and allows us to hold our pain with tenderness. Each of these steps, each of these insights, points to the same core truth. You are not your anxiety. It is an experience, not an identity. It is a passing wave, not the ocean. It is a cloud, not the sky. This profound understanding isn't about being immune to challenges. It's about building an inner resilience, a deep, unwavering core of peace that remains untouched by life's inevitable fluctuations. When the silence of the night feels heavy, when the weight of the years seems to press down, when your chest tightens with worry, whisper this truth to yourself. This is not mine. This is not me. This is not who I am. Speak it with profound tenderness, not with resistance or as a weapon against your feelings. Because this thought is not a tool of battle, it is a soothing balm, a healing melody for your inner landscape. And maybe as you continue to gently practice this, as you consistently return to this truth, you'll begin to see anxiety not as your sworn enemy, but as a surprising teacher. Not something to desperately run from, but something that in its very appearance reveals your profound strength, your enduring resilience, and your incredible boundless capacity to return again and again to the deep wellspring of peace that has always resided within you. So if you've made it here quietly listening, your heart open, perhaps even a little softened by the journey we've shared, I want you to pause for just a moment. Simply breathe. Because what you've heard today isn't merely a teaching, a philosophical discourse, or a collection of ancient ideas. It's a profound doorway, a gentle hand on your shoulder, lovingly reminding you that anxiety is not a failure. It is not proof that something is fundamentally wrong with you or that you are somehow broken. It is in its deepest sense a sacred call, a quiet invitation to look more intimately, more compassionately at your inner world, to release what was never truly yours to carry, and to gently finally come back home to the enduring peace that resides within you. Imagine yourself standing on a vast, serene mountaintop under a boundless sky. Below you, a storm may be raging in the valley, the winds of worry, the rain of regret, the thunder of fear. For too long, perhaps you've believed you are that storm, or that your peace depends on desperately fighting it. But this ancient wisdom reveals that you are the mountaintop itself, steadfast and unshakable, and the storm is simply passing through the valley below. You don't need to defeat the storm to find peace. You simply need to remember where you truly stand, where your true nature resides. The Buddha, in his boundless compassion, never promised a life utterly devoid of storms. He never suggested that challenges would cease or that sorrow would never visit your doorstep. But what he offered was infinitely more powerful, more enduring, the profound tools, the inner wisdom to remain steady, grounded, and peaceful within the storm, regardless of its intensity or duration. And among these life-changing tools, one stands out for its directness, its elegance, and its transformative power, the simple yet revolutionary thought, This is not mine. This is not me. This is not who I am. This simple mantra is your gentle reminder, your unwavering anchor. Repeat it as often as you need. When the silence in your home feels heavy pressing in on you, when the night stretches long and sleep feels elusive, when your chest tightens with worry and your thoughts begin their relentless churn, speak it with profound tenderness, not with resistance, not as a weapon against your feelings. Because this thought is not a tool of battle, it is a soothing balm, a healing melody for your inner landscape, a loving whisper to your nervous system that it is safe to relax, safe to be present. And maybe just maybe, as you continue to gently practice this, as you consistently return to this liberating truth, you'll begin to see anxiety not as your sworn enemy, but as a surprising, perhaps even benevolent teacher. Not something to desperately run from or to suppress with all your might, but something that in its very appearance illuminates and reveals your profound strength, your enduring resilience, and your incredible boundless capacity to return again and again to the deep wellspring of peace that has always, always resided within you, untouched and unbroken. So I leave you with this question, dear friend, as you drift towards slumber. What would your life truly look like if you stopped clinging to what doesn't serve your deepest well being and instead started listening, truly listening to the quiet wisdom that brings you back home to yourself? Good night. If this message touched your heart and brought you a moment of peace, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice, your story, could be the light someone else needs tonight. And if you'd like more reflections like this, gently grounded in timeless wisdom and spoken straight to the soul, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our Moon Temple channel. You are always welcome here exactly as you are. Until next time, breathe deeply, walk gently, and remember who you truly are. You have never been broken.